welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. It's 7:30 p.m. Here in Jerusalem, and my name is Avi Matterer. I'm your moderator host for the evening. And as I said, we're starting on time, 7:30, 7:32 right now, and we're going to do our best to finish promptly within 90 minutes. We have two speakers with us this evening, Mark van Gelderen, excuse me, and Avi Yaponski, and we will be switching back and forth between our two speakers, each one presenting their areas of expertise, but we'll be starting with Mark at the beginning and then moving back to Avi and then back to Mark and then back to Avi. So as I mentioned, my name is Avi Matterer. My background is actually in AI and applying automation to enhance financial analysis. And of course, the professionals that you'll be hearing from tonight, Mark and Avi, are on the webinar because they are the people that I assist in optimizing their analysis and their trading systems in order to make their better decisions for you. As I mentioned, Mark is going to start, and then Avi Tilonsky, same name. I'm Avi Matterer, and it's Avi Tilonsky, and he will be playing within the middle of the webinar. And what I ask is, please, that we are sure that there are going to be questions that come up. The questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. All you need to do, please, is put them into the chat at the side. I'll be copying them. Some people will have similar questions, so I'll just make sure that we ask the same question only once to the best of my ability to sort those out. And we will answer those questions, as I mentioned, in the last 20 to 30 minutes of the session, so that we finish on time at 9 o'clock. One legal point, of course, I need to remind everyone that this seminar is for informal information purposes only. It is not an offer to sell or to encourage you to make any decision about anything discussed or presented. As you have further questions or need more information, my role is not only to be your host, but also to be a contact for answers, or you'll be able to contact, of course, directly Avi Latonsky or Mark himself. All right, so without further ado, I'm happy to get us going. I'm just going to share my screen here, and then we'll call up Mark to be our first presenter. Just one moment, just going to share here. Okay, Mark, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Avi and Avi. I'm going to get started. The presentation hasn't come up on the screen yet, but if you have it at home, we're going to skip over the first page.
And it should be up. Sorry, Mark. Let me just take a quick look. You don't see. 1 second. There. How's that?
Ah, much better. Okay, so let's skip that page, and then next page that gives the topics we're going to cover this evening, and get into the third page, which is what we do. We're helping people see the big picture and get their issues resolved as early as possible. So there's, from our point of view, 3 issues that should always be discussed before we get to the final 3 issues, which has to do with taxes, investing, and insurance and related issues. So even those who don't need to budget on a day-to-day basis, budgeting can be an important thing that needs to be discussed, especially going into retirement and related to major goals that need to be funded. We are not lawyers. We're not accountants or tax preparers, investment brokers, insurance agents, but we work with them very closely so that we can help you get to the proper results. So if we can, let's go on to the 4th page, and which ties into something that is very important for most people, which is how to go and protect assets from being sued away from you, taken by the government, how to reduce legally your tax exposure, etc. So that's going to be a focus that is always in the background, regardless of what we speak. It's going to work a little bit differently for people who are higher net worth, say over $1 million. There's more things that need to be done and more techniques that can be brought to the picture. But for most of us, we're going to go on to page 5 because on page 5, we're talking about tax shelters that are available to just about everybody, depending on your citizenship. So if you're in Israel, there's things like Kupat Gimel, uh, uh, Karen Hishtal Miot, and things like that. If you're American, you're familiar with IRAs. If you're British, you're familiar with the SIP. If you're Canadian, you know what an RRSP is, etc. These are all available. People don't take full advantage of them in most cases. And that's one of the areas that we often want to start with is to go and protect your assets from invasion and also to reduce your tax exposure. One of the things that is interesting that will probably be a question in many people's minds is my foreign legal tax shelter, an IRA, a SIP, or whatever it is, uh, going to be a tax shelter in Israel? And the answer to that is yes and no. That most often the second country is not putting that into their tax treaties and their regulations, but it's implied. And one of the problems we run into is that many tax preparers are strict constructionists. So they say if it isn't mentioned, we got to go and protect the government as opposed to protecting our clients. And that's good for some people, but not always is doing the best job for you, depending on your tax preparer, because the tax preparer in most instances is the one who's making the tax decisions much more so than the individual governments. A third point here, assist in providing for the future. 20% rule is something that has become much more important that everyone understand as life expectancy has dramatically increased over the last 4 or 5 decades. And we can't be putting our heads into the sand and saying, I don't have the money now. I need to pay my bills today and not have part of your plan that you're saving perhaps as much as 20% of your incoming income for planning for the future, for emergencies, for retirement, for helping children, etc. This is something that everyone needs to think about seriously. Okay, let's go on to the next page. On page number 6, talking about self-directed IRAs. I stuck this in here because there's something very cute and interesting here in Israel. They have a class of Kupat Gemel that is now available, and its official Hebrew name is a self-directed IRA. And that's for people who've been able to put a larger amount of money into their Kupat Gemel. They don't have to just depend on the government authorized funds for Kupot Gimel, but they can actually do it through a stockbroker and have a portfolio. that is more aligned to their needs and values than what is available through the approved programs. In America, a self-directed IRA is describing something very differently, which is not a standard IRA, but it's one where you can hold real estate, precious metals, collectibles, and other things. And this is generally done with a custodian who is not a stockbroker or banker or whatever. Okay, so let's go on to page number 7. Number 7. Here is a list we've put together of lots of different ways where we can be investing our money. And there's all kinds of different categories. The one that we most get involved with because we work with people developing their portfolios, whether it's done through our associated portfolio management company, 21st Century Advisors, or others, is to go and do managed portfolios. It can be all the things described above, but most often it consists of mutual funds, closed-end funds, exchange-traded funds, and in general, managed accounts. Okay, I think we can go on to the next page, number 8. And I'm not going to spend time going over this slide now because I don't know who is attending the seminar. So I hope those of you who need some help planning before, during, or after the tax holiday, once one becomes an OLA to Israel, you'll ask questions in the question and answer session. So we're going through the material relatively fast right now, so there's going to be lots of time for you to get your questions answered. Just send them in to Avi, and he will have it organized in a little while, so we start answering your questions, and many of them may be related to this slide that's on the page right now. Okay, I'm finishing here, and I'm turning this back to Avi. You're not connected, Avi. You're on mute. Avi, you're on mute.
Right, got it. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mark. That was very practical and important information already, and I'm sure there's going to be questions coming through on that, and certainly on this specific slide that you just finished with. So I'd like to introduce FiRN's newest member, Avi Tilonsky. Avi actually just finished a career of 11 years at the Joint Distribution Committee's head office here in Jerusalem, and his most recent position was as head of emergency services team during the war. His team identified emergency social and educational services needed in specific communities during the war and found individual and community organization sponsors to support those needs. He has worked with Jewish and Gentile individual donors and organizations like federations around the world. Before the war, Avi was volunteering actually with Olim. Olim is a financial counseling service here in Israel. And he's also completed his personal finance training at Bar-Ilan University, and Avi has smicha from Yeshiva University. So without further ado, I'm happy to introduce Avi Tilonsky. Avi.
Okay, thank you, Avi, and thank you, Mark, for setting us up there. It's good to be with all of you this evening, or afternoon if you're in America. So I wanted to raise an interesting point, which is something that many people think about, which is the question of where to keep assets. Should we keep them in Israel? Should we keep them in other countries? And I would say that we're not going to give you the final answer on that tonight exactly, but I want to raise a few of the considerations. And that's what you can see here on this slide, number 9. And really one of the things to think about at the top of the list is the issue of having an emergency fund. We generally recommend having an emergency fund here in Israel, maybe up to half a year. Some people may want more, some people may want a little bit less, depending on their circumstances. But the idea of having money in Israel is good for many, many reasons. Number one, it allows you to have flexibility. Right now, the shekel is very strong. The dollar is less so. So you can decide where to use the money at a different time. And in addition, what if there's an issue getting access to your funds outside of Israel? I know that they've changed the security protocols. Now they want two-step verification, and a number of people have had issues getting access and withdrawing money. It's just a good idea to have some here in case you need access to it, or if you need access to money quickly. So for that reason, it's a good idea to have an emergency fund in Israel. In addition, there are pros and cons to having banking and investing in Israel. And this is overall, each person has their own considerations, and we'd be happy to have that conversation with you. And we may have solutions to some of the different issues that people are facing. As I mentioned before, access, that's one of the big questions. Getting help to solve problems. Where do you think you'll have more assistance? In Israel, you may be able to walk into a place and actually meet somebody face to face, but if you have your money overseas, you may not. On the other hand, as many people who make Aliyah know, the customer service in Israel is not always up to par, and some people feel that they get better service from banks in other countries. So this is, sort of a decision that people need to make. Costs, we have to look at the specifics, but in many instances, it's cheaper oftentimes outside of Israel. But we'd have to look at the details. If you have a specific question, then please feel free to reach out to us after this call if you would like to think about that more. Taxes, are you within the 10 years? Are you after your 10 years of making Aliyah? Because that really impacts on the taxes and the decision of where to do your banking or investing. Rates of return, where it may be better or worse. And also, obviously, Zionism. Many people who moved to Israel moved here because we care about this country, because it's very dear to our hearts, and we want to invest in the Israeli economy. So that's also a significant consideration. And all of this, these are all little pieces in a big puzzle. And if you want to think about any specific situations, we'd be happy to discuss it with you, arrange a short phone call or a Zoom meeting as well, and help you think through these issues. But at least we've raised them. I guess, Avi, we can go on to the next slide, please. So relating to this question of where you keep your money, I wanted to mention one tool that we have available for people, and that is called the Simple Shekel Money Management System. And it's run together with a partner that we work with, Moshe Yonis. And the idea is that based on your monthly budget, you bring over a certain amount of money, and then that money is invested in very secure types of investments and is available here in Israel. And then each month, based on your spending, based on your monthly budget, a certain amount is freed up into your bank account so that you can use it for your expenses. And all of your regular payments are automated. It's using what's called a Horat Keva, which means a regular outstanding payment on a regular basis done automatically. So this is helpful for many reasons. Number one, because you know that things are running smoothly, and it's very useful for people also who travel back and forth, because if you're not on top of your bills, obviously that may come back to bite you. But if it's all automated and set up so that your money is invested and then each month it's freed up and your bills are paid, if you go away for 3 months or 6 months, some people spend time visiting children, grandchildren, or others, or just traveling. And this way, you know that everything is set up smoothly and will be taken care of when you're not here. There are more benefits to this as well, and we'd be happy to talk to you about it more if you're interested.
Okay. Thank you very much, Abi. And I'm going to now switch back to Mark. And Mark, you can take it away from here. I'll move up to the next slide for you.
Okay, right. We're on slide number 11. So we originally started with the conception that people should be able to have the flexibility that they had back in the United States. And we found out that no other country provides the financial system for managing money that exists in the United States. So we went to Moshe Yonas, who's totally independent from us, and developed a system that uses as much of the Israeli tools as possible for managing money. But I want to spend a couple of minutes just to tell you what the American system is, particularly if you're not someone who is familiar with it because you're not a U.S. citizen or haven't ever lived in the United States. So the summary of it is that all your financial activities are kept in one simple account. There aren't sub-accounts. You don't have to have accounts with different kinds of custodians. It's all in one account. And that includes checking, savings, investments, Visa card, and similar activities. All are shown on a single statement, and you can see a journal page that shows everything in order, giving your transaction history. That is something that unfortunately doesn't exist in any country other than the United States. These are known as cash management accounts. They're easy to follow. You can see what's going on online almost real time. There may be slight delays. You can speak to someone 24 hours a day with its cost-free telephone number out of Israel and 50 other countries. And if you're working through us, you can get our assistance during normal business hours here in Israel. One of the things that makes it so important is that there are few ongoing costs. At most transactions cost 10 cents. Okay, usually 0. And most daily activities, there are no monthly fees. There are no surprise fees of whatever. It's really useful. So let's go on to page 12, where you'll see that there are much more details about what I just mentioned. I'm not going to go through each one, but the important thing is that this is available if you're based in Israel and any one of 30 other countries, to non-Americans as well as Americans. And it can be done for businesses that are registered here, trusts, and other types of non-human entities. The tax issues are kept very simple, and particularly if you're a non-American with no residency in the United States, there's some significant tax advantages for having these types of accounts. So they can be very interesting, particularly for people who've never had exposure to them before. If we go on to page 13, it's just want to mention how we approach a lot of the things that we do with our clients and the people that we counsel. By the way, we have lots of meetings with people. 90% of the people we meet with, we have no financial relationship. We help solve their problems in 10 to 20 minutes or so and give them ideas and contacts for solving their specific problems. But many people see that coming to Israel from abroad or going from Israel to live abroad is new headaches. Yes, there are new headaches, but if we take the Aikido approach that we're redirecting issues so that we can find where there are weaknesses in the system that we can take advantage of, we can come out ahead. Need to remember that regulations and laws are made by people with special interests. They're not made by God, and they're not made by idealists. So if we know what it is that the people who have lobbied for getting various tax changes and interpretations of tax laws are, and we can go and reinterpret what we're doing to meet those special exceptions. We can come out way ahead. So going to finish here, turn things back to Avi and Avi, and then we'll wrap up things in a few minutes and start taking your questions. Avi?
Okay, thanks again, Mark. Yes, we're going to go back to Avi Tilonsky, and Avi's actually going to give us some insights that he picked up at the joint, the JDC, in helping to plan Israel's future, and he has many insights that can obviously inform future-going decisions for all of us on the financial front. So, Avi, we're back to you. I go to slide 13 or 14?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so I really wanted to share some thoughts that relate to the war, and I guess really the post-war, and changes within the economy and our own financial decisions, and how that might impact on some things going forward. I know that some people might say, how can you call it a post-war update? And I'm not going to comment on the political situation. That'll be something that we'll need to wait and see about. But I'm going to look at some of the financial circumstances which may have changed because of the war. So Avi, you can move on to the next slide, please. So one thing many people may have noticed if they have Israeli investments is that the economy here is doing fairly well. Over the past year, meaning in 2025, we've seen that there's a 35% increase year on year in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. So many people who have, let's say, a FiRN Kubat Gemel Hashka'a or a FiRN Hishtalmut, some of these Israeli instruments, they may see significant gains. And also the shekel is very strong compared to other currencies. So if you've been noticing the difference between the dollar, you've seen that, whereas there have been times when the dollar was worth 3.8 shekels, even 4 shekels in the past. Now it's hovering, around like 3.2 or give or take, which means that the shekel is quite strong compared to the dollar. And, there are reasons based in America, and there are reasons based in Israel, but overall, the Israeli economy is doing surprisingly well despite 2 years of war, really. So that's one thing to note. Let's move on to the next slide. The next thing I would say, which is really important, has to do with spending patterns. And this is something that perhaps we could intuit, but if we think about it, during war, people often spend less. That's something that's been historically true, and it's been roughly true in Israel, although because the war has been prolonged over 2 years, spending did return, meaning at the very beginning there was a decrease in spending, but then it did return, and people did continue on with their lives. And it was even, in many ways, I know I felt this, that it was seen as a Zionist action to go out and shop. I felt that way, at least. You're going to a store, you're supporting businesses that maybe are suffering because of the war, you're supporting reservists, and that was great, which meant that spending did come back a bit, but overall, spending is a little bit toned down during wars. And you can see an interesting note. Here is a chart that shows credit card spending in 2025, obviously not till the end of the year because we haven't hit the end of the year yet. But you can see in, July and August, 2 anomalies. In July, credit card spending went down by 10%, which is very significant. And why was that? Because we had the war with Iran. And then in August, after the 12-day war, credit card spending went up 20%.
Sorry, Mark, that's June, July, not July, August.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
right,
good.
Right, no,
Yes, June, July, correct.
right.
So credit card spending went back up 20%. And, it's logical because, if you're hiding out in the miklat, you don't have time to go shopping. And then all the things that you didn't get to purchase, suddenly once the war, that short period of the war is over, you can go out again and you want to get all the things that you didn't get. I think there's a little more to it than that, but, in the basic sense, that's something interesting to note. We can move on to the next slide. Okay, so so what did this do to us psychologically? Sort of, what was the effect on how we think? If you think about it, there are a couple things to be aware of. Number one, there's what's called pent-up demand, which is sort of what we were talking about before after the Iran war, after the short Iran war, that people they say, well, I didn't get to do all these things during the war. Maybe I didn't want to go far from home because of possible missile attacks, or I want to be close to the miklat, or whatever it is. I didn't get to do these things. I didn't feel comfortable going on a vacation, for instance. So I should do it now. So suddenly people are doing all these things that they didn't do for 2 years. And you can see that, you can see that in terms of airplane tickets. There are many more people traveling now than there were during the more expensive times of the war. This is pent-up demand that suddenly, after the war, or as there's this ceasefire, people are going out and spending more to do the things that they've been meaning to do for a while. Emotional release. There's also this effect where people say, I need to relieve stress. I want to return to a normal life. So, I've had a tough 2 years. I'm going to eat out more. I'm going to go to more restaurants, or I'm going to do things to feel normal. I'm going to buy new clothes because I want to feel like a person again. And all of this is normal and probably good in many ways. It could get out of hand, but it's something to be aware of, that we have this need for emotional release after a war. On the other hand, some people may take things in the other direction, meaning both of these two first effects could make somebody spend more money. But many people have the opposite effect, where they may feel a sense of uncertainty and instability. They may decide that they want to save more money to create a sense of security. They said anything could happen. This war is not fully over. Our enemies still exist. We've seen what it's like to live through a war, and I need to have more money in my bank account. I need to be ready for anything that could happen. So instead of saving 10%, I'm going to save 40%. People have all sorts of ways of thinking about things, and that is one of them. Just for some statistics, about 55% of children experience anxiety during the war. 42% of adults were struggling with sleep because of the war. I hope that these numbers have decreased a little bit now that there is a ceasefire, but the impact is very, very broad, and people could be impacted in either of these two directions, either to spend more money or to save more money to create a sense of security. All right, next slide, please. And another thing that's impacting society on the whole, I don't know if it impacts every one of us, but many of us have family members who have served in the army during the war, either children, grandchildren, spouses, or just neighbors even. And we can see that the war has had a very major impact on a lot of these families. 37% of Miluim families experienced financial difficulties. So a lot of the people who are serving our country, protecting us and our families and our neighborhoods, are really struggling. And maybe they're too proud to mention it. Maybe it doesn't show. Maybe we don't realize it. But there are people who are really hit hard by their contribution to the country. Also, for many people, they've served in the army for 200 days, 300 days, 400 days, and the army sort of became a career. Maybe they aren't going to go back to their regular jobs. They can't return to what they were doing before. For people who had their own businesses, a lot of these businesses just closed, and it's not like they were fired or anything, but if you can't run your business, you're going to lose your customers. So for many people, the army became their career for the past 2 years, and now they're struggling to return to the workforce. They're looking for jobs, they're trying to interview, and it's a long process, and it's not so easy. So people are hit hard by that as well. I'll mention that there's a website called Kol Zchut, which is listed here on the slide. And for anybody who is in need of, finding out what their benefits are and what sort of rights they have because they served in the army, there's a whole page there listing all of the official benefits, and it's very helpful for people. So if you know anybody in that situation, you can refer them to that website. All right, next slide, please.
Avi, I'll just clarify that Kol Zchut is for all citizen rights. It's not just an army related thing. It's for anything between Homi, insurance, other legal aspects, whatever it is. It's not just an army thing.
Yes, that's right. They just have a special page dedicated to specific war-related benefits. That's right. Okay, so I want to just mention 4 takeaways from this overall situation, this survey. Number 1, we should try to think about balancing spending with long-term planning, right? We might feel the sense that we need to spend more to return to a life, to a normal way of living, or we might want to have that emotional release. And it's probably fine in many ways, as long as we're planning, as long as we take it into account, as long as we're being strategic. So I just encourage us to balance current spending with long-term planning. Maybe we want to go for that long-awaited vacation, and that's all right, but we'll just make sure we do it in the right way for us. Number 2, diversify for security. We've seen that the world can go crazy, the unexpected can happen. We've lived through pandemics, we've lived through wars, and it just makes sense in a lot of ways to make sure that our assets are diversified so they're not all in one place. And there are a lot of ways to do that. We're happy to have a conversation with anybody who'd like to explore what that might look like for them. Number 3, I know we talked about Miluim families and others. There are a lot of people struggling. So just from the moral side of things, I'd encourage us to keep in mind those around us who may be in need and remember them at this time. And also there can be tax benefits to giving charity, to giving tzedakah as well. And if you'd like to hear more about the best way to do that financially, we'd be happy to talk to you about that as well. And number 4, finally, before the war started, people called young people the TikTok generation. They said that they are, focused on social media. They may not have values anymore. They may not be willing to sacrifice for the country that they live in. But we've actually seen this young generation be rebranded as Dor Shel Arayot in Hebrew, a generation of lions. We've seen that they've been heroic, they've been patriotic, they've been Zionistic, and in many ways that we should be proud of them. But it also speaks to the fact that we want to help these people, help young people get started in the right way. And I know, for instance, actually, I just had a baby boy. And one of the first things that I did was reach out to open an investment account for them so that we can put aside money for them each month so that they will, by the time that they turn 25, 30, whatever it is, they'll have some money set aside in order to buy a house or do whatever they need to do at that point. So I would just encourage us to think about the next generation, whether we're parents or grandparents, friends. There are ways to get started saving and investing for young people, and the sooner the better, because the money builds on itself. So I would just encourage us to take away these 4 things, and we're happy to talk about any of this if you'd like.
Okay, I'll continue.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Wrap things up. Thank you, Avi. And Avi,
Thank you, Avi.
just want to summarize to a certain extent what it is that we do to improve our clients' lives. The main point, besides these bullet points here, is that we act as buyer's agents. We are not selling anything other than our knowledge to clients. We're people who have studied what's going on. We feel we have a grasp of what is the big picture, and we can make sure that you're not wasting money getting overlapping services, and we can help you decide which are the best ways to invest your money, to do your taxes, and do many other activities. So we act as buyer's agents, not salesmen or marketing agents for any particular organization. And let's go on to the next page. here, 21. We feel that we can help people significantly. We work with organizations that regulate us and are regulated in the United States and in Europe, particularly our companion organization, 21st Century Advisors. And when it comes to investing, even so the investing might be done through us, we have at 21st Century Advisors some proprietary investment plans, but we also can bring in the investment strategies and plans of over 300 other investment managers, which nobody else seems to know how to do. So that could be of help to you. And in summary, the last page here, 22, it tells you how to get in touch with us. Avi will try to be in touch with each one of you who signed up or attended today. And we hope to have some productive conversations just to help you solve your problems. And we'll see where it goes from there. There's no cost, no obligation since you signed up for the seminar. So I'm done, Avi. So have you gathered together some questions that Avi Tilonsky and I can help answer for people?
Absolutely. There are a number of very good questions. There's a question that just came in, which is just an overall and touches upon what you were just describing, Mark. So I'm going to just read that one out first. And the question is, what is the FiRN fee structure, service fee per hour, percentage?
Okay, that's a great question.
There you
First of
go.
all, the first meeting is always free. So there's no charge. And as I said earlier, 90% of the people get their questions answered, get lists of people that they can go to for solving very specific problems, tax area, investment area, legal area, and other things. And we're done. For those of us who need further help from us, there's two ways that we get compensated, and it's up to the client to decide which way they want to go. Like lawyers and others, we can charge by the hour and keep track of what we're doing, or put together a plan where we're charging for a certain project to be done, management consulting. But over 90% of the clients that we have choose the second way, which is that they're going to do their investing through us. And as a result, they will be paying reduced management fees wherever they go using one of our managers. And we get paid that way through management fees that are done by 21st Century Advisors. And then they compensate us for having brought the clients to the project. Okay, does that answer it?
Well, I'll leave it up to the person who put in the question to put into the chat if that's a good enough answer. If anyone has any other questions. Oh, he said yes. Thank you. There you go.
I
Okay.
guess I'd just add to that we also have this written out. So if anybody didn't catch it or would prefer to see it in writing, please be in touch with us. We'd be happy to send more information about this and many other topics as well.
Okay, perfect. The next question. Are there such things as high interest? I remember those days from the last century. Are there such things as high interest savings accounts here in Israel where we can park some cash and earn a decent amount of interest?
Okay, I'll answer that. This gets back to the asset management here in Israel. In general, the best source of income in Israel is from agachim, Igeret Chov HaMedina, meaning Israeli government bonds that are in denominated in shekels, not the ones that are sold abroad in local currency in the United States or the UK or wherever. So agachim are providing generally a better rate of return than tachniot chisachon bank savings plans. And it's one of the reasons why we use people like Moshe Yonas to put together a plan, because their fee for doing it, if we're talking about a large enough pot of money, is relatively low, and they're able to put together a laddered bond program for our clients so that they're never getting the best rate, nor are they ever getting the worst rate as interest rates change over time.
Okay, can you give Mark a comparison, or is that appropriate if you give a comparison as to, when someone locks away for a month or a year or 3 years relative to the agachim?
Well, I'm not up on the rates. Something
Okay.
I probably should have given Moshe a call to find out the current rates. But what's interesting here in Israel, and this is very different than in other Western democracies, is that the rate of return on agachim is actually above the inflation rate after taxes, while in the United States, gilts in the UK, etc., you'll get a rate of return, but after taxes, you're never keeping up with inflation.
Okay.
And consistently, Israeli agachim keep up with inflation and add a little something above it. You're not going to get rich from it, but at least your money isn't losing spending value as you keep it in a savings program.
Okay, thank you. A question about inheritance. I understand there is no inheritance tax in Israel, but it seems to have a ceiling with the states that are over a certain amount do have to pay some taxes. What is the ceiling at this point in time?
Okay, I guess I'll answer that as well, and maybe Avi wants to add something to it. In Israel, there is no inheritance tax, and there is no ceiling above which you start having to pay tax. In fact, the system is entirely different than it is in other Western countries. Israel does not have any kind of inheritance tax, but it has what's called a gift tax. So if you're receiving a gift, then there's a tax in terms of its appreciation, capital gains. In other words, in Israel, if you inherit a property from your parent, for instance, that property goes up in value, and the property is not going up in value from the time that the parent passed away, but it's going up in value from the day that it was originally bought. So if that property has been in the family for 40 years, there's 40 years of appreciation, regardless of whether the parent or the children wind up selling that property. And in Israel, there's actually extremely complicated calculation how to figure out that capital gains tax. But the short version of it is that capital gains, dividends, and interest in Israel are all pretty much taxed at the same rate, which is 25% from the first agara, from the time that it was bought. The reason why it's so complicated is that if that property has been owned for 40 years, there were years when the capital gains tax, mas shevach, was higher, and there were years when it was lower. So you wind up having to hire a forensic accountant, bookkeeper, who that imputes a value for what it has increased from year to year and what the tax rate was for that year. And that's a complicated calculation, but at the end of the day will save the taxpayer some money.
Okay, thank you. Just circling back to the agachim, someone has asked if an agach is in essence a bond.
Yes, it's a government bond.
Bond. I see.
And
Okay.
government bonds are one of the few categories that have a lower tax rate. So the government bonds are taxed at source, but not at 25%, but at 15%. And
Okay.
generally, when you get a quote on what the government bond is yielding, it is taken into account what is withdrawn at maturity for the government. So taxes are paid at source. And if the bond had a coupon rate of, say, 2%, then you probably get quoted that it's worth 1.7% because they've already calculated out the taxes.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Inheriting an apartment. If a child inherits my apartment, the only apartment I own, does she pay taxes at the moment of inheritance? Does she pay taxes if she decides to sell it? I think that was answered, but go
Yes,
ahead.
only when it's being sold.
Okay.
Okay, but we need to go back and talk about something else, which is, was there a will in place or was the inheritance via the government's will? So if there isn't a will that describes what should happen with this asset, who gets it, then the government decides who gets it. So if there's only one child and they're the only next of kin, they get 100%. However, if there is a surviving spouse and say 3 siblings, then if there's no will in force, the surviving spouse gets 50% and the siblings get 1/3 of the remaining 50%. And the same will happen when the surviving spouse passes away.
Okay. What is the difference between the Moshe Jonas money management system and the cash management system from your slide 11?
Well, one is talking about how to do it in shekels, living in Israel, and the other one is talking about the money that is kept outside of Israel.
Okay. Is it better to invest in a property, building and renting it as a rental unit or in stocks? The magic question.
That's actually 3 separate questions.
Okay.
Because of the tax system in Israel, residential property can often be taxed very differently than a commercial property. It all depends on how you set it up. And the return on your money invested could be very different, whether it's considered a residential property that's being rented out or a commercial property long term. There's very different tax laws about that. The comparison with a brokerage account is interesting because historically, brokerage account and Israeli mutual funds have appreciated pretty much at the same rate as residential real estate in Israel. The appreciation has been 10 to 12% a year on average. And that's pretty much what one can do if they're investing abroad as well, using historically equity-based mutual funds or ETFs and that sort of thing. And if the money is kept abroad and it's invested, you can have more diversification. Got to remember that if you're buying real estate, you have little diversification. It might be a great investment, but if a tall building is built next to it, or it gets hit by a rocket during the Iran war this past June, or that sort of thing, you have major headaches and you have no one to share that with other than the bank if there's a mortgage on it. So it's a very different kind of management commitment than if one has a brokerage account.
Okay. If a
I'll
child
just
already
add to
has,
that for a
ah,
second that
go ahead.
it also depends what your goals are as part of your bigger portfolio because liquidity is a big question. For instance, it's much harder to get your money out of a building than it is out of stocks that you can more quickly sell. And there are many considerations. So the answer is not necessarily across the board the same for everybody. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Avi. If a child already has part ownership in another apartment, will that affect her inheritance of my apartment?
No, because there's no inheritance tax. It just goes under the gift tax law when something is sold.
Okay. Okay. Okay, here's a bit of a longer question. Can you address bringing a UK SIPP into Israel during the 10-year tax holiday? It's a pension in the UK, but how is it viewed in Israel if I bring it in partly or wholly? Also, the UK and the US Israel tax years are different, and I would want to bring the money in gradually to keep a lower tax threshold for my US taxes.
Okay, I'm not sure if it's in a tax sheltered plan in the UK, there may not be any advantage to bringing it to Israel. And part of that is a tax law in Israel. The tax law in Israel is that if it is taxed, the pension is taxed in the originating country, it's not taxed in Israel. If it is not taxed in the originating country, then it will be taxed in Israel even if you keep it abroad. So depending on the plan and somewhat the country, there may be advantages to keep it abroad permanently if it's being taxed there even nominally. And if it isn't being taxed there, then the question that was given to us is totally correct, that at the end of the tax holiday, it might be best to be brought to Israel and then to look at how in Israel you can reduce tax uh, its taxability. There are very few ways to avoid taxes in Israel other than Keren Hishtalmut or Kupat Gemel. And if it isn't money that can be added to them, you have to look at how it will be managed and how it will be taxed once it's brought here.
Okay, thank you. Not sure if this is the right forum, and perhaps Mark and Avi, you can address it afterwards. But are you able to provide any recommendation on accountants with experience in both Israel and Canada?
Yes, we have several people here in Israel who are chartered accountants or certified in Canada. And if that person sends us an email, we'll give them a list of people that they can contact and talk to.
Okay, thank you. Can an American citizen have a Kupat Keren Lahashka'a?
Here in Israel.
It's a Hebrew Keren, so I'm guessing yes.
And so what's the question?
Yeah, the question reads as, can an American citizen have a Kupat Keren Lahashka'a? I'm not familiar with that specifically, but perhaps you are.
I'm not sure what the question is. Avi, do you have?
I think they probably mean a Kupat Gemel Hashka'a, and they're asking because of PFIC, I would guess.
No, it's Canada, not American.
This is American citizen.
Oh,
American.
oh, an American. Okay. Avi, you want to continue?
Um, well, I think that yeah, sure. There's basically there's a category of investments which are uh, penalized by the American tax system, which are called passive foreign investments, PFIC, and many people consider Kupat Gamal Hashka'a to be a PFIC, but you should really consult with your accountant, I would say, to confirm that that's how they perceive things. Is that right, Mark? Anything you'd add?
Yeah, correct. Let me add something to that. I mentioned it briefly earlier in the presentations, is that one needs to understand if they're using a tax preparer, how aggressive he wants to be or how he wants to interpret things. So let's talk about a Kupa Gemel Hashka'a or a SIP or an IRA. In all of those structures that go across boundaries, if you look at the statement, it usually says on the statement that you get that this account is being held in trust for you, the taxpayer. And because it's being held in trust for you, it is tax-free. However, many tax preparers who are very much afraid of the IRS and want to be the IRS's best friend will interpret that even so it's being held in trust for you and you don't officially own it, that will be considered an American type of investment. And if it's in a mutual fund type structure, that falls under the category of being a PFIC. Not all tax preparers take that strict construction approach. And tax preparers today, because there's relatively little auditing of tax reports, they are accepted as the interpreters of the law. So your tax preparer, in many ways, is acting as the agent of that government's tax department. And you have to decide whether you want a person who's a strict constructionist or a person who will defend you if you get attacked for having a PFIC in your Kupat Gimel. And that's up to individuals to decide.
An important application of this is there's an Israeli government program to save for children. So when a new child is born, the Israeli government puts 50-something shekels per month into a savings plan for that child, and you have the opportunity to match it with another 50-something shekels yourself, and you save that amount every month for the child. And there are different investment options for this money. One of which is a simple bank savings plan where you're paid interest. Another one is an investment type plan. And many accountants look at the investment option as being a PFIC. Some of them may not. But for that reason, many American citizens choose to only invest in the option that's based in a bank savings program. But obviously, the returns are lower. So that's something that if you are facing that or considering it, you should be aware of that issue and consult with your tax professional to see how they perceive it and what they recommend.
Avi, do you know if just given that it seems like the age here of some of our attendees is older than new parent age, can grandparents contribute to that?
I think that I think that the parents do it, and it's only a maximum of 50-something shekels per month to match the government contribution.
Okay.
I'm not sure if grandparents can do it for them, but grandparents can certainly transfer 50 shekels to their children to contribute it. So if the children are on a tight budget, and it's something that's worthwhile. But I would say that if you're only going with the bank program, you should think carefully whether it makes sense to contribute the 50 shekels there or maybe in a different way, based on the way that is being invested. Happy to continue the conversation if anybody is thinking about that. And it's a good thought to think about how to save for grandchildren.
Sure. Okay, so I have one last
Can I
question
add,
here.
just a couple of words?
Please.
I feel very strongly about this. I, particularly as a result of having lived through the recent war here, I believe that the most important charity in the country is the Israeli government. And I am not at all against paying taxes. And if you can make more money even after paying taxes here, why not do it? Okay, we need to support the government and everything that needs to go on here. And I feel pretty much the same way about Western democracies as I do about taxation in Israel.
Yeah. Can you get a tax receipt for your tax contribution to the country?
Okay. Why don't we come back to that?
Right.
It's one of the things that I'd like to talk about, but first let's answer people's questions.
All right. I have one last question that's come in here. Could you elaborate about trust restrictions for dual Israeli-American citizens and how to manage those restrictions to the benefit of the client? I mean, I'll add other countries as well. It doesn't have to be only America, I'm sure. It applies perhaps differently, but across other locales as well, not just America.
Okay. Most people consider the Americans as being the outliers in terms of worldwide taxation and making life the most difficult for their expatriates abroad. Israel also has that honor, but it's in the trust area. Since 2013, Israel has new laws regarding trusts. And I can't go into specifics because I'm not expert in all the details, but roughly it is the following. If a trust has an Israeli beneficiary, an Israeli taxpayer, that trust is considered for tax purposes an Israeli trust, no matter where it was created or managed any place in the world. Therefore, trusts are a big problem for families who are basically abroad with only a few members in Israel. If anybody is part of a trust where they are in Israel and they have brothers, cousins, whatever, who are also part of the same trust, but they're not in Israel, they have created an infection for that trust so that Israel can claim taxes on the entire trust. And they have ways to do it. So anybody who has a trust that has beneficiaries with multiple residences around the world should talk to a tax expert here in Israel, and we can put you in touch with one or more so that you can figure out with the grantor or settler of the trust how to proceed forward so that not everyone is infected with Israeli taxation. Okay, Avi?
One more question came in here, just a moment. What if, whoops, a couple questions here. Sorry, let me just grab these out here just a moment, please. Okay, the first question is, what if the trust only passes to children after the passing of the parent? Is that treated as an inheritance or as a trust?
It's the term of who is the beneficiary. If the beneficiary winds up being another trust or company or some other entity that is outside of Israel, and there's no beneficiaries with a Tudat Zahut in Israel, then it's probably immune from Israeli taxation. But if there are any beneficiaries that have a Teudat Zehut and are resident in Israel, it's a big problem. And it's worth getting a consult instead of waiting till the last minute and having a big problem on your hands, plus taxes that weren't paid for previous years. Okay.
Yep. One more question so far. Are you familiar with Shnat Hishtalgut? Something like that, where you essentially delay your Aliyah decision for about a year. Avi?
Not familiar with it, but
Oh.
everyone who's on this podcast who is considering Aliyah, you need to know that the tax obligations to Israel are changing as of January 1st, 2026. Okay.
Is that final, Mark?
What?
I know that there's the reporting change. That's
Yeah,
final.
that's
But
one.
there's an income tax
And
for
then there's an
employees too as
income
well.
tax advantage. So there's one big minus and there's one big plus.
Right.
I don't think we need to go into that unless somebody here is considering making a change now in the next 35 days.
Right. Okay. It seems like we've gone through the questions and everything's been unsurprisingly very, very informative. Thank you, Mark and Avi. Any last
Okay.
comments before we wrap up?
Yeah, so I want to talk about two additional things, and one we already mentioned, and Avi Tilonsky may have some things that he wants to add. So one of the taxation is always something that people view as a negative, that it means that government is taking money out of our pockets. Here in Israel, there is a reverse form of taxation that everybody needs to know about, where you can put money back into your pocket from the government, and that is donations. I want everyone to be aware that if you're donating to a Chapter 46 charity in Israel, meaning a charity that's been approved as a real charity by Mas Haknasa, the Israeli tax authority, the ITA, then they're entitled to getting 30% of what they donated back into their personal bank account after reporting it to the tax authority. But there is one big caveat. You're getting back taxes that you already paid. You need to show that you had a salary slip or some other thing which was paying significant taxes into the Israeli treasury. And then if you can show that you have Chapter 46 receipts from the Israeli charity, they will process that, double check that it's true, and return to your Israeli bank account 30% of what you gave to charity. However, you have to be able to prove that you actually paid in the tax year where you're handing in the receipts taxes that are greater than the 30%. And then you can get back some of the taxes into your bank account. Not only that, but you can go and accumulate your receipts for up to 8 years and go in at the end of a year where you have paid significant taxes to Mas Haknasa with those receipts. And about 5 months later, you'll get back 30% of the value of those receipts from Mas Haknasa, which is pretty amazing. It's very different than the tax benefits you have for charity in the UK, Canada, or the United States. And this is one of the real nice things of living in a Jewish country that thinks like Jews. Avi, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, sure. I'll add just a couple points to that. Number one, the fact that you can go back a few years means that we're almost approaching the end of 2025. So, each year you should think if you haven't filed this for years in the past, then try to take care of it because you don't want to lose out on this benefit unless you do want to contribute 35% more to the Israeli government. And also, there's a new tool here in Israel, which is called a DAF, or a donor advised fund. And this is something that's existed in America and probably in elsewhere in the world for a long time, but it's relatively new to Israel. And it enables you to make a charitable donation if you don't know where you want to donate yet. Like if you're having trouble deciding where you want to give your money, but you want to make the contribution before the end of the year in order to give that money during 2025, for instance, you can give it to this donor advised fund and then decide where it's going to go in a month, 2 months, 6 months. I think there's a limit to it, but at a later date. So if you know you want to give tzedakah or charity to a good cause now, but you can't decide where it should be, you can give it in this tax year and then take care of it later and decide where it will go exactly. So that's a new tool that's available to people. If you're interested, you can check that out. But it's a good way, and otherwise it's also good to just decide where you'd like to give it, find something that matches your values, and get your 35% back as well.
Okay. Are we okay if we add a couple more questions here that came in?
Okay, let me just add one thing that
please.
the second point I mentioned earlier is a very quick one, is that as we get older, we need to make sure that our lives, at least financially, are much less complicated. And that is one of the reasons why Avi and I talked about money management accounts here in Israel and money management accounts abroad, so that things can be consolidated in one or two places, and it's easier for us to follow as we have less interest and maybe ability to follow things, and also for our successors or perhaps people who will go and step in and manage things if we're incapacitated, so that things are fairly simple and straightforward. So it's one of the reasons why we spend so much time talking about money management accounts. Okay, Avi, what questions do you have?
Are beneficiaries of ordinary bank accounts or IRAs where one of three beneficiaries is Israeli, as I am, the person who's asking, is this the same issue as a trust?
No, it's not a trust. It's a bank account. You're bringing up a fairly interesting issue. Here in Israel, everyone should make sure if their bank account is more than 10 or 15 years old that they have filled out a form called Arichut Yamim, so that a joint bank account can be at least partially operated after one of the owners dies. Because in Israel, bank accounts are not set up like they are abroad often as joint tenants. They're partnerships. And Israel has very strict laws, and the banks have even stricter rules that each bank makes up for itself what to do when a owner of an account dies, even if they're only a partial owner. So that's something that you need to talk to your bank about, or we can help you a little bit in terms of knowing what the issues are. Abroad, particularly in these cash management accounts, they're set up as joint tenants, meaning that if a person dies, it does not affect the ability to operate the account by the remaining owners. whether it's spouse or children or partners in a business or whatever, as long as it's a joint tenant account.
Okay, Mark, I believe you answered this question, but just for the benefit of others who may not have seen your answer in the chat, and if you have anything to add, when a child inherits an apartment, then the best thing to do is keep it, i.e. live in it or rent it out rather than sell it. Because if the child sells it, she has to pay a gift tax. And I believe you answered there that the tax would be 35%.
25% generally.
45, 4 or 5?
25.
2.5. I see. Okay.
Okay. Same as dividends and interest in general.
Okay.
Taxation in Israel is kept very simple. It isn't a graduated system like many countries have. So, and it's from the point of original purchase. And that goes for valuables as well. If you inherit a car, a painting, diamonds, you need to be able to show when it was bought and at what price it was bought. So it's pretty simple and straightforward. People should be aware that the basic Israeli tax code is under 2,000 pages long, while the American tax code is over 1,000,000 pages. So they've managed to use European as opposed to North American logic and keep things pretty simple and straightforward.
Okay. Okay. One last question, and in the interest of wrapping up, and I'm sure there are other questions that may come up. This will be the last one. And of course, when we wrap up, we'll talk about how people can get in touch with Avi Tilonsky or Mark. So the last question that I have here is, would capital gains taxes count towards the taxes paid that can be used for the 30% back?
Probably, but we need to double check with an Israeli tax preparer. I've never been asked that question before, and I'm not an Israeli tax preparer. Okay, talking about that, there was one thing I forgot to mention earlier. If you are going to get going for getting a refund of your donations, it's a very simple process. You go into the tax office and you say, I need a tax form for Israeli rebate of donations for 2025, for 2022, for 2023, for 2019, and they'll give you the same form, but you need one form for each tax year where you made donations. And you fill out that form and you paper clip to it the receipts, and then you go into a tax person who sits down and makes sure that the paperwork makes sense and is readable by the tax authority. And they say, thank you. They hold on to your paperwork. You go home, and then magically about 5 months later, you'll see a deposit into your bank account.
There you go. Okay, well, thank you very much to Mark and to Avi, and thank you very much to all who attended and stayed with us throughout, and all the great questions that came through. As Avi and Mark mentioned, everyone is entitled to a personal meeting with Avi or Mark, and it's at no cost or obligation. More often than not, the personal meeting will be provided to you, and with a list of third-party professionals that are trained to deal with your specific needs and whichever countries are specific to your specific situation, whether it be legal, insurance, investing, taxes, etc. God willing, we're going to have another seminar like this with additional speakers in January, and of course, we'll let you all know. We will be sending out an email shortly, a couple of days, with a link to the full recording of the webinar as well as the slides, and you'll have access to that by direct email in 2 or 3 days time. And thank you very much.
Okay. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
And toda rabba. And Chanukah Sameach.